Good morning, and welcome to the next devlog for Daemon Change. It's been a while, and we will talk about that in a bit here. This is going to be a longer video. I'm kind of imagining like a work-along almost. I encourage you to put this video on in the background. I'll try and put on some fun music, and every so often I'll come back and chime in with some fun notes about what I'm working on, general life stuff, so we'll just sort of chillax. This is the Daemon, the main character of the game. I've been calling them Change, but from the beginning I've wanted them to be a kind of personification of death. I don't personally view death as a particularly dark or sinister event. Instead, I like to look at death and my experiences with it as just times where both me and the world around me were going through changes. So one of the fun design tasks then for portraying death was getting away from that infamous cloaked skeleton. And so to do this, I chose to focus on a natural set of a predator and its prey combined into one creature. I looked at a number of different sets, like owls and mice, or wolves and deer, and so on, but the one I settled on was the fox and the hare. So this is those two creatures forcefully smashed all together here. One thing I really like, and part of the reason why I chose the fox and the hare, is because this creature looks very strange. Just proportionally, it's got this almost goofy doofus kind of air about it. One example that you'll see later on is the legs. Rabbit legs are strange to begin with, because they are plantigrade when they walk around, or when they hop around, which means they put their heel on the ground. But rabbits' feet are digitigrade when they run, which means that they book it on their toes. So when this creature stands in sort of a relaxed pose, it's kind of dinky and short, and it has to hobble around. If you were human-sized, you could imagine it as like a 4-foot tall character wearing clown shoes. But what's cool is that when it needs to move and it goes on its toes, it goes and becomes this slender 6-foot-tall creature from another world. So that dichotomy between like ridiculous and intimidating is kind of everything I was going for, and you can see it everywhere, from the big floppy weird ears to its fearsome teeth. I've been gone for a while. Strictly speaking, nothing really happened. Like, there wasn't any kind of major life event that prevented me from working on these. I don't think it was burnout either. Like, I'm still very excited to do all of this, and I'm enjoying it a lot. I think I tend to get really focused on things, and I love it because sometimes I don't realize something is wrong or stressful until it appears somewhere else in my life. So the example is that, and this was a while ago now, but my girlfriend and I sat down and we started watching Mulan. And we got to the point where her father is given the letter from the army, and then I just started bawling. Like, I was sobbing. We hadn't even gotten to the scene where she decides to take her father's place. But I just knew that scene was coming up, and I broke down into that, like, super gross, disgusting crying. Now, on the one hand, I felt fine. I would say that I felt fine, but the important thing is that your body and your mind will always talk to you. And if it was that easy for me to break down, then maybe it means or meant that I was under more stress than I realized. For anyone else who's chasing dreams out here like I am, it's important to hit goals and set deadlines, but it's also important to listen to what your body and mind say to you. Sometimes you need to slow down, and sometimes after you've slowed down, you need to pick it back up. I missed you guys, and I'm glad I'm back. One of the other strange contrasting things I wanted to do with Change is give it 3 arms. As a fun fact, I did a really sizable chunk of research, and I could not find a single endoskeletal creature alive, or just in history, that has asymmetric limbs. Most insects don't have asymmetric limbs, and there's basically crabs with their one bigger claw sometimes, and that's it. Having more limbs on one side than the other just is not useful for anything. So not only did I try to anatomically figure out a method for doing a second set of limbs under the first, I also have to deal with the fact that it isn't mirrored or symmetrical across the body. So just a couple interesting anatomical notes about Change's skeleton. Its spine, sternum, clavicles, and ribs are all asymmetric. The spine and sternum aren't even centered, they have to tilt, and you can visibly see more ribs on one side as opposed to the other. For the double arms, there's actually 2 clavicles, and the scapula for the lower arm is an inverted scapula that scissors up and over the other one. Basically, there was a chunk of work that went into designing Change so that it didn't feel like it had an extra arm popping out of its armpit, but rather that this is actually the natural state of this creature, and this creature is fundamentally not of this world. Dealing with skeletal issues is one thing, the muscles is another thing entirely. The good news is that every muscle has a very distinct function, whether it's a human muscle or not. So when you're making characters, it's not about creating random bulges as much as it is thinking about how muscles work, what they do, and where they need to go. There's been a handful of characters I can think of with divine arms. There's Machamp, Asura, Susamaru. Basically, all of them have arms just popping out of the ribs. My goal in this bit, and the specific anatomy choice that I made for Change, is that Change's arms are offset in position and rotation, and I did it that way so that the pectoral muscle of the upper arm and the posterior segment of the lower arm's deltoid are actually one muscle, and they wrap around a second clavicle. There's a bit here where I get lost in the tail. I don't fully know how I'm going to texture change yet. And I mean that in the literal sense of that I'm not sure if it's going to have fur or hair or skin or something else or what's going on with that. So I was starting to go into some kind of fur thing for the tail, but I decided to bail on it because it's going to take up a lot of time without me knowing what I wanted to do with it yet. The goal is to have change be capable of moving upright and on all fours using both plantigrade and digitigrade movement. And that's a lot. Like, that's a lofty goal for a character, and you can see me struggling with it in things like the arms. How do you create a bicep that is human-like when it's attached to an almost cartoonishly long limb, and that has to fade into something that's paw-like? This question of how muscles should blend and share functions between creatures and purposes is something you see me messing with a lot, and I don't really know what I'm doing in a lot of places because there's not really a right answer for it. But it is fun. I did get stressed out during this part, but trying to figure it out and looking at references for rabbits and foxes and puzzling out what they have in common or don't, each time it reminded me that I really like this challenge, despite it being super frustrating. I really like creature design in general. There's a bit here with the pelvis, so quadrupedal hips. The hips of quadrupeds don't work in any of the ways that bipedal hips do. They are incredibly different and do very different things. So trying to figure out how to combine them is really rough. There's a costume that's eventually going to be on change that's going to cover up almost all of this area. And it's a situation where it's easy for a lot of designers to say, well, if no one's going to see it, then it doesn't matter. But I am a full believer in the back of the dresser idea that if you get down to it and you really figure out how everything works, you'll create something more believable in the end. It may not look different, but it will feel different. After trying a bunch of things, I'm sort of settling on giving it exaggerated human hips. And in fact, the hips and the butt here are probably the most human part Change has. Another thing that's happened since the last time I got to talk to you all was some really amazing games have come out. In particular, I've been really enjoying Tears of the Kingdom and Diablo. I was actually tempted to make some guides or videos about some of the stuff in those games. If anyone would be interested in a Destry-made video game guide, let me know. Also, a shout out to a smaller dev that kind of hit it big. V Rising came out with a massive update a year after their initial release, and that game was already amazing to begin with. They've done nothing but improve it with this free DLC that they've made. It's not DLC, it's an update, but it's amazing, and they could have absolutely sold it on its own. Anyway, if you haven't checked out V Rising, I highly recommend doing so. That is a fantastic game. and we'll probably stop somewhere around here, mostly because I haven't done more. I still need to finish sculpting Change's anatomy, I need to tone down its crazy muscle definition, and I need to make the clothes. After all of that, we'll do topology and such, and we'll just start crafting our titular character one step at a time. One thing that's made uploading hard is this constant fear that such and such thing won't be impressive enough, and I keep forgetting that the part I enjoy most, and the part that is the most enjoyable to watch, is just figuring out stupid tiny details as they come up. I've got some of that it's not ready yet syndrome going, but I'm excited to keep moving on regardless. The last thing I wanted to say is, dear adventurers, thank you. Without spending forever on it, one of the most important things that has also gotten me back on track is that I have a desk now. I was able to buy a brand new desk because of you guys. I've been working for years at a kind of little dinky tabletette thing that was just very small and very cramped, and if you could see it, you would not believe that it was my workstation. So thank you guys for keeping me going in more ways than one. I'll see everybody in the next one.